morning. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you? Oh, you might be on mute. I think there's
I'm great, thank you.
good. Okay, so yeah, I've done a little quick introduction, but do you want to introduce yourself in your own words?
I'm Lycia. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer at the Design Museum on High Street, Kensington, and I'm really delighted to join this group today to really share a little bit about my career, which has been across both the High Street and the cultural sector. I also support smaller institutions as a trustee as well, and really everything that's kind of built up to kind of my present career has really helped influence the decisions that I've made.
Amazing. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Tell us about how you started out. What happened?
So I grew up in North London, went to school in North London. I've always been a bit of a generalist, so I've always liked to try lots of things. And I think, one takeaway from today will be that try lots of things, be creative, enjoy what you do. And I think that's really where things started for me. I liked numbers, I liked being creative, and I think they were great foundations to work for businesses or set up your own business. I did art foundation at university. I went on to do a design degree. So, a fairly typical kind of career foundation. I then worked while I was at university. So I worked at Thornton's and actually found myself really enjoying working for that company and worked my way up. I then took on a role at Signet Jewelers, which a lot of people know as H. Samuel and Ernest Jones, more in the analytical side of things. And I think for me, that really started to cement where I wanted to go next, and definitely wanted to go into a more kind of creative industry. And I got a call from a recruiter looking for a kind of retail and catering lead for the V&A. And really, that's where I guess the second half of my career really started as I transitioned over from the high street. I was there during, Bowie, McQueen, Italian fashion. It was really the start of those real big blockbuster exhibitions for the V&A. So really, really exciting to be part of that team. We worked on a number of projects. We also looked at kind of transforming our spaces into really exciting shoppable spaces with brilliant products. I then went on to work for the Ashmolean Museum to kind of lead on their kind of commercial strategy. And then more recently, before I joined the Design Museum, I worked for English Heritage, which is a national organisation looking after monuments, castles all over the country. And there I covered everything from retail to holiday cottages, filming, food. So actually from a creative side, whether it's you're deciding on the wallpapers for the holiday cottages or introducing, I don't know, a new candle and diffuser range, you really got involved in the kind of breadth of design, good product design. And now in my role, it's brought us again. It's the commercial areas, so retail and food menus, but it's also kind of those enablers, so things like IT and estate, your physical infrastructure to make what you need to do happen. So for me, I've had relationships, partnerships, relationships, developing high performance teams throughout my career, but actually the golden thread is creating products.
Amazing. I mean, what a varied like number of workplaces, number of industries, and it kind of really goes to show as well. Like you've given some examples of the kind of things that you've worked upon, the projects and the stuff that you've been designing. There's that saying, everything you look at around you has been designed. And I
Yes.
think you are kind of a really good example of the fact that you've designed so many things that maybe people will have overlooked or they might not have touched upon, but then also you've designed stuff that people are very aware are designed as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe give us a bit more understanding of the variety of things that, maybe some examples that the young people watching might not have clocked that actually are designed, like you say.
Yeah, I think design's an interesting one because for me, the difference between art and design is that often design is about thinking about innovation, the future, a solution to a problem, whereas art could purely just be aesthetic, very subjective, your view on whether that's, a nice painting or a nice piece of work. So for me, design is a little bit more interesting because, particularly if it is bringing a solution to the table that somebody else hasn't thought of. So some of the things that I've been sort of part of, it may be a shop design. So thinking about a shop design that allows you to use the full height, for example, of a space. Often you go in, you buy, there's a phrase, you buy at eye level. But how do you really use a space to not only give you a wow factor, but also sell the product? So, the space can't be too overwhelming, otherwise the product will be kind of overpowered by the fittings. It's thinking about how that product could be sold. Is it behind glass? Is it in front of glass? Can it be touched? And actually, as I said, throughout my career, I've been involved in not only the actual product, but how you kind of display it and sell it. But I think some of the more interesting projects I've been involved in that people may not know about is actually with licensing partners. So this is where you partner with a brand that's maybe got a strength that's bigger than yours, or is in a market that you want to get into. So one that stands out for me is the crisps that we did at English Heritage. So we partnered with somebody who had their own business. They had their own crisp company, Made for Drink. They recently won the Sainsbury's series, where you get a bay at the end of Sainsbury's. And they were just starting out. And one day I went to a tasting session that we were doing in a retailer, just got talking to them, and we stayed, in touch. And then I moved to English Heritage, and it felt like it was a kind of, a marriage made in heaven, because he really wanted to look at the history of food. So we brought together the history of food in pubs, premium snacks, and developed our own crisp range. That went on to be sold in our shops, in our cafes. But then he managed to win a pitch with British Airways. So those crisps were then on first class flights for British Airways. But it didn't stop there. We couldn't actually sell them the bags of crisps because the bags would explode in the air. So we then had to developed a box, so a cardboard box that's recyclable for the crisps. But now, if you fly first class on British Airways, you can buy English Heritage Made for Drink crisps. And I think for me, this is where my career has taken me into kind of paths and avenues that you would never dream of or predict. And I think that's great. You meet brilliant people along the way with brilliant ideas, and you make things happen.
I love that. That is so interesting. What a fantastic example. I mean, like you say, you would never kind of think that that would be an example until someone
Exactly.
says this happened. That's
Yeah.
wild. I love that. Also, just goes to show that, your career, if you were the crisp person,
Yeah.
their crisp brand can go anywhere as well. So you can take that
Exactly.
with
Yeah.
you've had a couple of kind of, I guess, fork in the road moments in your
Yeah.
career history. What do you think is the most significant fork in the road bit for you, where you ended up choosing the creative path rather than the traditional
Yeah.
one?
I think for me, it was when I moved from kind of working in high street roles as kind of area managers, regional managers, to the V&A, really, because I haven't looked back, and I've stayed within the cultural sector. I like to think I try and give a lot back from a voluntary perspective as a trustee as well. And for me, it was just a phone call. I wasn't looking, I wasn't planning to move, but I got a phone call from a recruiter, and I thought, why not? I've got a design background. This feels like it's a really good fit. I spent a lot of time at the V&A doing research during my degree, also during my A levels as well. So, for me, it felt like coming home. And at this point, I wasn't in London. I wanted to get back to London. I'd moved out for university and work. So I wanted to get back, and it felt like the right time. So for me, that was the key moment, and absolutely thrilled when I got the role, and to be part of the kind of Bowie phenomena that was at the time. There was a concession in Selfridges that we had. So again, partnering with people that have got a significant presence on the high street, where we wanted to kind of have a space and have a Bowie concession pop up. We then went on to do brilliant things with McQueen, and then started master planning on V&A Young, V&A Dundee, some of the other sites that people may not know as well as the main V&A site. And I think for me, that really opened up a world of kind of not only the core creativity that you get with product development, but in terms of spatial awareness, architectural design, thinking about packaging, thinking about promotion, thinking about marketing your offer, and really looking at the end-to-end proposition. I think I'd spent a lot of my career, or the first half of my career, in operations, so the delivery end. And I think what was really exciting in the fork moment was actually I'm going to be involved in from the start to the end. And I think that's both exciting, but I think you also learn a lot being involved in the end-to-end process as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd like to actually just touch upon the V&A Dundee because I know that
Yeah.
obviously you're from London and you work in London now. But you did say you moved outside of London and then you've
Yeah.
also been in contact with design outside of, the South, really. So
Yeah.
one of the big focuses this month is that we really want to emphasize that there is creativity, so much creativity outside of the capital, and you have been very much part of that throughout your background.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you've seen design across the UK?
Yeah. So I think, for me, as I said, I grew up in London, went to school in London, and then for university, I was at Loughborough. So I spent, 10 years of my career in the Midlands. And I think for me, one of the key moments of kind of realizing how much there was outside London was working with the Association of Cultural Enterprises. So they are a membership body for the cultural and commercial sector, and they allow you to, as part of being a member, to visit other sites. You go and hear from your respective commercial leads, people who are in retail and food and beverage about their sites. And I think for me, that was a real kind of wake up moment of how much or how much great kind of entrepreneurialism, but also how much art and design plays a role across the country, and actually how much kind of freedom and I guess ability to be more agile actually outside London. London knows what works and has frameworks to work in. There are core companies you work for and will have a lot of success. But actually, when you sort of go out to say the countryside, or I'm thinking of York Sculpture Park, or somewhere that actually has a lot of outdoor space, you start to have a kind of crossover between that core in the studio creativity with things like gardens and trails, and thinking about how you can bring to life creativity through animation or filming. And a lot of particularly northern sites are great backdrops for filming. And when we think about design and creativity, it doesn't just stop at product, right? You've got theatre design, you've got fashion design, thinking where McQueen's roots were in Scotland. So actually a lot of the ideas and where people have sort of born their inspiration from does come outside London. And I think there's this myth that there aren't opportunities outside London. If anything, your competition is less. So actually, go for it and really start to explore your local sites, your local art centres. There's sort of creative hubs all over popping up, and get involved. Some people start their sort of paid career as such, volunteering, just kind of networking, volunteering at some of these properties or organisations, and they build up confidence, they build up knowledge, and that's a really good way to start.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Like how the end product is very physical often, but a lot of the design that can be done nowadays is also online. So it is
Yeah.
actually like kind of non-location specific. How much of your job is physical and how much of it is online, would you say?
I think obviously post pandemic that has changed, but that's changed because we've had to fast track hybrid working. Most of us hadn't heard of Zoom and Teams pre-COVID, and then it was switched on, and then essentially what it's done is it's enabled it. I think it was always there when you think of kind of field roles for retailers like area managers have always existed. They often spend most of their time or working career in the car. So it's a really good comparable. And I think for me at the moment, it's really important to have a physical presence, to be there, there's nothing better than looking, touching product, making decisions in person with people. But I also think having a kind of hybrid working, I mean, we're doing this call, in a hybrid way today, enables your reach to go much further, right? So you can work internationally, nationally as well, and actually be more productive in some ways. I'm thinking some of those early discussions, kick off online, and then you sort of bring in person and so forth. So for me, it's about a third to two-thirds. So a third kind of working from home or remotely or meeting clients off site, to two-thirds being in person. And I think there's nothing better than being in person to make those final decisions on things.
Fantastic. Um, okay, so you have briefly mentioned volunteering as an amazing way for someone to get involved in design. What other things would you recommend to people watching if they are interested in just dipping their toe in the water, seeing how they feel?
Yeah, I think ask questions, build your networks. So whether that be through LinkedIn or contacts you have, and make sure there is a diversity in your networks, different ages, people from different walks of life. It really helps kind of nourish kind of your relationships and your ability to network further if you've got a kind of diversity amongst your networks. Attend events, there's lots of free events, webinars, follow up with people. I think it's really important if you say you're going to do something, do it. But put yourself out there. I think if you really want to find what it is that makes you tick, that career path for you, you're going to have to try a lot of things. You may need to fail at a few things before you find the right path for you. And I think you've got to be prepared. You will get knockbacks along the way. There is a lot of competition out there. Set yourself apart. One of the things that I did quite early on, and this came from a mentor that was an inspiring leader for me, was to have your own personal values and standards. So for me, integrity is really important. Being authentic, but also having empathy. In whatever you do, whether you're a leader or you work by yourself, you have your own business, you will come into contact with people. And I think the most important thing is to have empathy, and set your own standards, and don't allow yourself to kind of take anything less. If you've got a kind of a certain kind of standard that you want to set, then by all means set it and work towards it. But yeah, be resilient. You have to be resilient. Take the knockbacks, and yeah, build your networks.
Amazing. And just to take it back to the original answer to the question, I think the first question that I asked you, you said that you were a generalist.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, something that is really useful to know. Like, what does that mean, I suppose, to a young person who's watching now who might not have heard that
Mm.
before? And also, how would they emulate that ethos in their kind of, I guess, building up a portfolio?
Yeah, I think, look, we all need people with specialist kind of expertise. So that might be a particular buyer who is in the retail space, but actually their specialism has always been buying, selecting great product, etc. But actually, I started in operations, and operations is a generalist role. You get everything at the end. You always get the least amount of time to deliver something, and you've just got to make something happen and be a success. And in that, you build up the skills to be kind of creative in your solutions, creative in your thinking on how you can make something happen. So for me, I found that actually being a generalist is great when you're building a career, because you can start out in operations, and that could be operations in a visitor facing role, it could be operations in retail or catering, and it can be quite broad. But I think you then want to sort of hone in on what your specialist subject is. So I've really kind of homed in particularly on the operations, but also as a kind of thought leader in leadership, and trustee governance. For me, those are the kind of two key areas that I try to hone my kind of experience and skills in. It might be that I've taken courses to kind of develop those particular areas. But I think the great thing with generalists are you have a lot of fun along the way. You try a lot of things, and then you find what you like and enjoy, as I've done with sort of the governance and the operation side, and you really hone in those skills and perfect them and build your standards and build your USP. Why does someone come to me versus somebody else? Why does somebody want to recruit me versus somebody else? And I think it's thinking about what your USPs are, thinking about what skills you can bring to the table. And they don't have to be lots, they can just be one or two things that you enjoy and things that you can talk about passionately when talking to other people.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We are actually slightly over time, but you have a chance now to say anything else that you would like to communicate to the people watching.
I think for me, if I was to look back or give my younger self some advice, one of the things that I would say is lots of people will have thoughts and opinions. It's your life. You have one life. Make it matter. And I think for me, things get easier. Things get easier along the way as you build up your experience and your resilience. But the one piece of advice I was given that I would like to pass on is get yourself a mentor. It doesn't matter what stage you are in your career, get someone who believes in you and can really give you that support and that sort of foot up, whenever you need it. But I think most important, create your own destiny, create your own destiny.
Oh, great advice. What a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, this has been recorded, so it will go up if you want to watch it again, because I imagine that there are so many bits of wisdom in there that people probably will want to watch it back and absorb it all again. Thank you so much. I'm going to move you into the attendee room now, but it's been wonderful having you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay.